So I think the Village is a really nice place to be, but again, it's not for everyone. So I'll be talking about the pros and cons of living in Cranfield Village, and then the pros and cons of living in Bedford and Milton Keynes, and hopefully you can make up your own decision about where you want to live. There are lots of very lovely villages around Cranfield, any of which you can pick to live in. You might want to think about how quick it is for you to cycle from that village to Cranfield University, or if there's a bus, and how frequent those buses run. Are they one of the Cranfield Uno buses? So a Cranfield Uno bus will start with the letter C, so we'll have C1, C10, CX, which is the express bus from Milton Keynes. You also have C11, I think we also have a C12 and a C5. The C12 and the C5 don't run very frequently. I think they only run like 4 to 6 times a day, so don't count those buses really as places that will get you to and from campus. But you can find a lot of villages near campus, particularly between Bedford and Milton Keynes on the way, that will have places that you can live. They tend to be a bit cheaper than going to Cranfield Village, which I will talk about as an option for accommodation. You will probably pay a little bit extra money on the bus fare, because from Cranfield Village to the university there's a day ticket you can catch, so like a return bus ticket. I think that's £1.10, or that might have gone up. So £1.10 a day, a return bus to the campus, which I think is very cheap, especially by British standards. There's not much you can get in the UK for £1.10. Or from the village you can also cycle. But I think from these campuses you might be paying £2.20 a day for a return, so about double. So you have to ask yourself, is the reduced price of your accommodation being further away equal to the £30 a month you'll be paying on bus fares? Because I think it's about a month bus ticket is about £30. Okay, so Cranfield Village, pros and cons, should you live there? So Cranfield is a fairly large village when you consider other villages in the UK. It has, I think, 3 restaurants, maybe more. It has 2 shops, one fairly large budget and one smaller co-op, which are both good places to get food and drinks. Co-op I think stays open to 11. There is a post office inside the co-op, which is very nice if you want to use the post office to send a letter. There's a football club as well if you like to play football. I think there are things you can do for sports. It's great if you like the countryside. Lots of really nice countryside walks around, so it's a really nice place to sort of get in touch with nature. In the village there are actually a lot of students. The village is probably the go-to spot for students who couldn't get on campus accommodation. Most people then, they look for accommodation in Cranfield Village. So by living in Cranfield Village, you're going to be around a lot of other students. You'll be taking the bus with maybe people from your course. There'll be opportunities to socialize with other people. It's also not so far away from the main campus that you can't walk to it. I think it's about, depending on where you are from the campus to where you're in the village, but it could be anything from like a half an hour to 45-minute walk from the village to the campus. So it's a bit far, but say you stay one Friday night in CSA till 2 o'clock in the morning and you don't have a bus back to the village, people do walk from the campus to the village. So you could walk with your flatmates back home, maybe a bit tipsy, have a nice rewind to your night out. It's not that far, so that's one of the benefits. You can go to the campus, have fun, maybe go to some of the parties on campus, maybe go to the CSA, do something late night there, or likewise there are lots of house parties that happen in the village, and sometimes some of the best parties you're going to have in Cranfield are actually house parties in Cranfield Village. But yeah, you will find really good house parties in Cranfield Village, and that's quite a British thing to do actually, to have a house party. It's quite expensive for us as British people to go out to a nightclub or to a bar or to a restaurant. Things are very expensive for us in terms of going out. There's a lot of tax on that for one thing, but we're also quite an expensive country really, so a lot of people will find it's a bit of a luxury to go out and go to a nightclub, go to a bar, etc., spend money. So you will find, especially for us students, that we do a lot of things like house parties. So, you know, you buy your alcohol, your drinks, your snacks, whatever you want to do, and you bring them to your house and you invite some friends around. So that's kind of what British people do. Obviously now with COVID, the culture's changed a bit, so people are now favouring going to restaurants or going to pubs where they don't bring people into their own homes. A lot of people are a bit wary about bringing other people from other houses into the homes. So yeah, you will find that people are going out a bit more, but again, still there's a lot of house parties, a lot of gatherings, as you can hear behind me. There is a current rule on only having 6 people in a gathering at one point now, which means you're going to have very small house parties. But maybe that will change when things get a bit better. Actually, one thing I didn't mention is British pub culture. So I did say that we don't go out too much to things like bars or nightclubs, but we do go a lot to pubs. So this is a big British thing, is to go with your friends to a pub. There is a difference between pubs and bars in the UK. So a pub is somewhere you go to drink, to socialise, to chat, to meet people. There's lots more of a focus on sort of sitting with a drink. You don't have to order alcohol. You can have a coffee, you can have a juice. I often go to pubs and just order like a drink that's non-alcoholic. And it's all about sitting with your friends, chatting, have a good time with the people you're at, maybe meeting new friends, meeting new people. Maybe the pub has a quiz. A lot of pubs do this sort of quiz night. So yeah, pubs in the UK are a more social kind of gathering place, and they're very important places in villages. So Cranfield Village has 2 pubs, and you'll find that a lot of locals will go to the pub. So if you're interested in meeting local people, it's a really nice place to go. So if you're interested in nightclubs, there are nightclubs in Bedford, there are nightclubs in Milton Keynes, and CSA, even though it is more of a student pub, student bar, on Friday and I think Thursday nights, they turn half of the CSA into a kind of nightclub space. So they play music, they have strobe lighting, so in a kind of weird way, CSA is definitely a bar on those nights, or if not a nightclub. I would kind of consider it halfway between a bar and a nightclub, which sounds strange, but during the normal times of the day, it's definitely more of a pub. So yeah, I hope I haven't confused you by talking about this too much. And let's move back to Cranfield Village. Another benefit that one of my friends who used to live in the village told me about going to the village is that, say you and some other classmates, you're working a group project, or you're just talking about the coursework that you've got coming up or something like that. You have a coffee with each other at the CSA, kind of chat. You don't have to think about what time your bus is coming, because from Cranfield campus to the village, there's frequent buses. Maybe you're going to get a bike, so you don't even have to worry about buses at any point. You can hang out with people who live on campus a lot more easily. You can hang out with other people who live in the village. You're a lot more connected to other students. You're a lot less worried about bus times. You don't have to worry, if you have a car, about commuting in. There is a lot of traffic at rush hour. You know, it's a lot easier just to live in the village, and you can get a much better social life, as I mentioned earlier. You can go to one of the 2 pubs, etc. Now, there are downsides to the village, of course. One of them is that it is, at the end of the day, it's still a village. You don't have bars or nightclubs. You won't have a lot of the amenities that you might get in Milton Keynes or Bedford, or maybe one of the larger, even larger villages that you'll see on the C1, C10, C11 bus routes that go around. You might want to go somewhere that's closer to a train station. I think some of the buses do go near. There's a train line that runs from Bedford to Bletchley, so you might want to live somewhere there. I quite like living near train lines, actually, because I like to travel a lot. Maybe you're someone who really wants to travel a lot to London. You really like London. If you really like London, I recommend living close to either Milton Keynes or Bedford train stations, because Milton Keynes and Bedford train stations have frequent and fast trains to London. Milton Keynes has a big train station. It's on what we call the West Coast Main Line. So it's a railway line that goes from London and it goes up to Scotland, along the west side of the country. And what's the great thing about that is, from the West Coast Main Line, you can get to London very quickly in just half an hour. You can go to Birmingham very quickly as well on this West Coast Main Line. You can go to a number of other British towns and cities that you might be interested in. From there, you get really good links to Wales, which is also west of England. You can go to Scotland, which is north of England. Central Milton Keynes is basically a glorified shopping centre. Now, some of you might really love shopping centres, and if you really like shopping centres, then good for you. I do not love shopping centres. I really don't like the idea of being in a large glass building during winter or summer, where I have the illusion of being outside, but not outside, and breathing everyone else's recycled air. and big chain shops that are really expensive, and lots of crowds of people, and this kind of weird white wall new agey stuff. Anyway, I don't like shopping centres. If you are the sort of person who loves shopping centres, or maybe you call them shopping malls in your home country, then yeah, sure, come to central Milton Keynes. They have like 3 of them. There's lots of chain restaurants, there's lots of things and stores, so it's definitely an interesting place. I'd like to think of it as like the Dubai of UK, because it's, you know, it's so modern and it doesn't have any sort of character, and yeah, it's okay. I'm really mean about central Milton Keynes. It's not actually that bad. There are actually some nice little stores, and actually there's a market in Milton Keynes. It's not every single day, but I think it doesn't run on Wednesdays, but there's a lovely little market just outside the shopping centre, and it's like really cool. I want to do a video about it when I can. Felt like I stepped into another country, but then I turned left and I stepped into another country. It was so interesting. There was lots of different things that I've never seen sold in the UK before, and I really loved going to that little market. And it's an outdoor market. It's a semi-outdoor market. In the shopping mall, there are food stalls. There's a little outdoor bit with like little food stores, and that's really cool. And there are also actually some little independent sellers in the shopping mall who run these little stalls inside, and those are pretty cool as well. So I'm kind of giving it a bad rep here, but yeah, it's an okay place, and especially if you do like kind of this shopping center vibe, then I definitely would suggest coming to live somewhere around Milton Keynes Centre. There's I think about 6 or 8 estates that are quite close to the centre, and you know, it's a good place if you just like being around other people and shops and things happening. You do have the advantage that Milton Keynes is really easy to cycle, so if you get yourself a bike, I keep saying this, but get yourself a bike, you can cycle all around and save yourself a lot of money on bus fares, and it's really easy to cycle around Milton Keynes. It really saves me a lot of money on petrol. I just like to cycle. I tend to cycle to the centre. It takes me about half an hour because I live quite far away from the centre, but on a couple times that I've wanted to go to the centre, I've cycled up there. It took me like half an hour. Really convenient. There are also like cycle hire schemes that we have around, and until the end of October, cycle hire in Milton Keynes is free, so give that a little go. There are also lots of pubs and bars around Milton Keynes, not just in the centre. There are lots of little shops. I think every little estate, I don't know what they call these little grid housing areas, well, everywhere that you'll live, you won't be too far away from a shop. You won't be too far from like a takeaway or something to eat. They have cinemas and bowling. There's lots of cool things to do in Milton Keynes. They do cost money. Also, you'll find that you won't be far away from parks either. There are lots of beautiful parks in Milton Keynes. And make sure that wherever you choose to live in Milton Keynes, you are near the C1 or the C10. Is that a 10? Also, I think the C10 doesn't always run on the weekends. So you might want to think that if you are living somewhere where the C10 goes into uni, you might want to check to see if there are also buses running on the weekend that will get you to central Milton Keynes or somewhere else that you might want to go on the weekends. There's something called the CX. Now the CX is an express bus service, and it's absolutely amazing. It's a long time coming. You can catch a bus from central Milton Keynes or from the train station, and it only takes you 20 minutes or even 15 minutes into campus, and it's really great bus to take. Let's move on to Bedford. So a lot of things I've said about living in Milton Keynes kind of also apply to Bedford, but Bedford's a lot more of a traditional town. So where you find Milton Keynes is this kind of modern, newly built town that people have kind of designed and planned, and maybe not planned too well, but they've made Milton Keynes from scratch. Bedford is a town with more history, more traditional things to it. You'll find that people may have lived in Bedford through a few generations. Maybe people have just moved to Bedford, and it's got more of that sort of traditional central vibe. So there is a town centre in Bedford, while Milton Keynes doesn't quite have that. There is central Milton Keynes, but it's more of a spread out area. You won't really find that there's a particular central hub in Milton Keynes. When Bedford, there is a town centre. There is a pedestrianised area. You can walk. There are lots of very nice shops in Bedford, just like there are in Milton Keynes, but in Bedford there's a lot more open air things to do. There are also markets in Bedford, just like there are in Milton Keynes. There's a lot of multiculturalism again in Bedford, just like there is in Milton Keynes, and there are lots of good bus routes. I think again all the buses go from Milton Keynes train station to central Bedford, and from central Bedford Milton Keynes train station, so you're not going to have to worry about that. You also got all the coaches that go from Oxford and Cambridge from Bedford, so again you're very well connected. You've also got Bedford train station, which goes from London to Bedford. Bedford train station actually goes to Luton Airport Parkway. So if you are someone who really wants to travel around Europe and that is a big main priority for you, do consider also living near Bedford train station, because you can get trains very quickly to Luton Airport Parkway, and you can also get very quick trains to London. So yeah, consider that if travel is again one of your priorities. And also from Bedford, it's on the East Coast Main Line. So from the East Coast Main Line, you can go all the way up to Scotland and the rest of England. I do actually prefer going to Bedford Town Centre than I do going to Milton Keynes Town Centre. And there's lots of really nice cafes in Bedford. And there's lots of also really good charity shops. Charity shops are shops where you can buy secondhand clothes and toys and pretty much board games and anything you want, you can buy at a charity shop. And the reason they're called charity shops is because they're owned by a charity. And when you buy something from a charity shop, so say I want to buy this dress from a charity shop, I'll pay £5 and that money will go to the charity shop. So people will donate their clothes. So say I've decided I don't like this dress anymore, I'll donate it to a charity shop, and then the charity shop will sell this dress for about £2, and then someone else will buy it, and then the charity shop will get that profit of what I've donated. So it's a kind of cool way of donating your unwanted things. So it kind of reduces waste, and it also means that you're buying things a lot cheaper and probably a lot higher quality than you can get in a lot of the cheap supermarkets in the UK. I would recommend at least visiting Bedford occasionally, even if you're not planning on living there. Another advantage of Bedford is they actually already have a university, so there's University of Bedford, and a lot of people I've met, even though they're master's students, they really like the idea of being around undergrads, because undergrads are a bit silly and daft and they do weird things, and they like this kind of youthful energy that they bring. So you'll kind of get that in Bedford Town Centre. You'll get a lot of students from the university, so maybe you'll feel a bit more studenty in Bedford. What that also means is Bedford has more nightclubs and more bars than Milton Keynes. So Bedford's a great place to go for a night out. You also get cheap nights out on like days like Wednesdays or Tuesdays. So if you want to have like a really cheap night on a Tuesday, Bedford's also a really great place for that. I also have noticed that in Bedford, accommodation is a bit cheaper, and so are also a lot of the villages from Cranfield to Bedford. There are a lot of villages on those bus routes that will also offer you really great cheaper accommodation. And yeah, Bedford is a nice place. A lot of people have told me that, you know, they've heard that it's really unsafe and there's a lot of crime, and you know, maybe that's true, but I really wouldn't worry about it. There's no really unsafe part. You know, people live there at the end of the day. So, another kind of downside maybe of Bedford is that it is a bit further away from Cranfield, so it will take you maybe a little longer to go from the heart of Bedford to Cranfield by bus. I have taken the bus from Cranfield to Bedford a couple times for various different reasons, and it was okay. Yeah, it was fine. There was no problem with it, but I don't think it's for everyone. So yeah, do think about if you'd want to take the bus for that long. And I think that's pretty much the really main downside of Bedford. That's all I can really say about where to live. And I hope you guys make a really good informed decision. Like I said, my personal choice for anyone who's asking me where should I live, I would say in short, live in the village because it's great for student life. But if you don't want to live in the village, live in Bedford or Milton Keynes, try and share with other students and have a good time. Let me know if you have any questions.